Welcome to Body Talks Mind Lessons with Indu. Are you ready to hear real life stories from around the world how Body Talk system has helped heal trauma and brought vitality back to life? If yes, stay tuned and find out if this is what you have been waiting for. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Body Talks Mind Listens. And each one of these episodes are unique because I talk to a Body Talk practitioner who has expanded the Body Talk practice into something of a unique story, which makes a lot of sense because in Body Talk we reveal the story behind the symptoms. So also in every episode we reveal a new story that a practitioner has created with Body Talk. So today, the unique story that our interviewer Jennifer Auburn is going to tell us is how she has taken Body Talk and she has woven it beautifully into the Indigenous culture in Canada. So let's hear the whole story. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Indu. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really pleased to be here with you.
Yes, I'm excited to hear the whole story, right? So let's start with taking a step back. And yes, you are in Canada, but have you ever always lived in Canada?
Yes, I've always been here. The way I often introduce myself is Bonjour, my name is Jennifer O'Born Crowley. I'm a settler on Treaty 1 territory where I was born, also known as Winnipeg, Manitoba in Canada. And I've lived here most of my life.
All right. Now, also taking a step more into your personal life, growing up, what were you thinking that you were going to do when you grow up? Like everybody asks that question, right? Uh,
Yes. Well, I was really um, aware when I was 4 years old. I knew that my place in the world was somewhere between a teacher and a doctor and a psychologist, kind of somewhere between those 3 points. But I'd never seen that and I didn't know what it would look like. And of course, when you're a little kid, people ask you all the time, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? So I told people I wanted to be an archaeologist because that was the closest that I could imagine to someone who could sit with people, who could see the beauty inside them, and also maybe some of the challenges that kept them from knowing that beauty, and could help excavate a little bit and draw those things out so that both their load was lightened of those obstacles, but also they were more able to see a little more who they are. So that's going way back.
yeah, wow. You put it so beautifully. I've never heard somebody describe archaeology from a human perspective. You always think of archaeology as buildings and digging up the past.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, what a
Well,
new color you have added to my definition.
but isn't that what we're doing in healing work, right? One of the women I sit with often uses the term excavating, that she's on a journey of excavation of her soul. So I'll give her a little credit for those words as well.
Yeah, beautifully
Mm-hmm.
said. And
Thanks.
we can only excavate so much at a time. So that's why, we go step by step and the digging continues until we get to the answer, right?
Absolutely. And when do we actually get to the one answer? I don't know about that. I feel like I started my healing journey when I was about 7 years old, and met healing teachers along the way as I got a little older. but I don't feel like I'm anywhere near the end. And I'm quite excited for where the journey continues to take me. I can't wait to know who I am come those last days.
Yeah, that is very true. A journey that ends only when it ends. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. So, since you you know what you want it to be and you have put a definition around it, but let's still talk about in terms of, career journey.
Mm-hmm.
How did it start and where is it today?
Okay. Well, just to kind of go back to that 4-year-old who never saw these things in front of her, um, knowing where I felt that I sat didn't make life easier, because when you don't see yourself reflected back, life can be quite stressful. So I've had to work through a lot of um, emotional insecurity or um, uncertainty living in this outside world. So as the things that I've come to move into didn't exist really, there were just the very first massage schools, in my area when I was leaving university. And but I did meet a healing teacher when I was 17 years old. I felt that I was old enough now that, I went looking at, there was a little alternative local newspaper, and I looked in it and I thought, well, I'm 17 years old. People have to take me seriously, and there's things I want to find out about. And I had an appointment with a woman for, well, it was a past life regression back then. It was
Mm-hmm.
one of the early things I looked at. And she just said right away, I'm pretty sure you're actually a healer. I'm teaching a healing course. Do you want to come?
Hmm.
And she kind of blew my world open. I met a second healing teacher when I was 24, and he did the same. But in the meantime, there's this outside world around us, and I felt I had to find my place in the outside world. So I went into education, and I've worked 15 years as a teacher in the public school system. And about 11 of those years have been as a student services teacher, so working with guidance and resource. So kind of being a healer in that context, because I got to sit with all those people who were struggling the most. And because I worked in a very high needs school, there was room to be a little bit creative in working with those people. So 15 years in as an educator. uh, Throughout, I've always had a small healing practice on the side and learned everything I can. So I had a small hands-on healing, energy practice in my 20s. And I went through homeopathy school in my later 20s. So I, picked up a lot from that world, and came across BodyTalk. Probably started seeing someone about 20 years ago. So probably 2003 ish, and began taking courses in 2008 and certified in 2012. So my prime work, I left the school system 9 years ago now, and my prime work is as a body talk practitioner. But really, the term that I use for it is that, I get to walk as a healer a little bit every day, and sometimes a lot in a day.
Mm. Wow. Uh, I so you talked about, being a teacher. So
Mm-hmm.
now you're
Mm-hmm.
done with that part, and
Mm-hmm.
you started early at age 17.
Yes.
That's really good. So, and somebody told you you had that healing archetype. So I
Yeah.
feel that these are breadcrumbs that start showing up. As we are ready, like they say, the teacher will appear when the student is ready, right? So that's kind of
Absolutely.
the synchronized world uh, that
Yes.
you started seeing. I'm happy for you. Not all of us arrive at Body Talk that quick, um, but it's good
Well,
to know that We all go through life 1.0, the external world, as I call it. And
Yeah.
then hopefully at some point, we arrive home and start going through our inner world and do that
Yes.
healing work. So
Yes.
good for you. So 2012, right? That's when
Yeah.
you became a practitioner.
Yeah.
So, what was your experience of taking Body Talk sessions, and what clicked that you need to be a practitioner?
Well, what happened was I was just going through a challenging time, like for many people when they step into you know a healing journey in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had a miscarriage, and I'd had quite a hormonal impact through my body for months following that event, and came to a point where I really had fibromyalgia like pain
Mm-hmm.
through a lot of my body. I felt like my whole body was literally falling apart. Uh, Even felt like I was in a dying process. And at that time, a friend of mine had taken up Body Talk and was building a practice. And I went for a few sessions with her, and it took about 6 months for those the physical experience that I had to be fully rectified, although it improved, you know, as we went along. And that very quickly, my response was, what on earth is this? Because this feels like free processing in some ways. I already was a person who did a lot of emotional process work, even, as a young kid and as a teenager. But there were some things that, for all the work that I did, were still my stories. You know, 10
Mm.
years later, still talking about the same, trauma, or, I had this hard time. And there was a time when she was working on me, and she was actually doing a cellular repair. And I felt a tugging in my arm. And I looked at her and I said, I feel like you're pulling that story out of my cells. And she turned to me and she was like, that's exactly what we're doing. And what was so fascinating for me in this work was that for all the work that we can do consciously, right? In our thinking, in our talking, in our counseling, in therapeutic processes, you know, those processes, you've got to do a whole lot of work for it to actually remove it from your physiology, right? Actually taking it from your cells. And that was the thing that I found in Body Talk. I think I'd been maybe 2 years into receiving this work. So I've been receiving it for over 20 years. And about 2 years in, my sense was, I think I am about 30 years ahead of where I would have been going at my own pace on my own. So it's been a non-negotiable in my life through all these years, even at times where, things were pretty tight or pretty lean. I've always made sure that I receive that work every 3 to 4 weeks. And now I do the same with my family too. We all go about every 6 weeks. My whole family goes, and every 3 weeks I go.
Hmm.
And
Good one, Jennifer. You have beautifully described uh, when a lot of people ask, what is a body talk system? And they
mm,
start comparing it to things like Reiki and so many other modalities.
yes,
And we have a hard time describing that here we're talking about a system that
yes,
transforms you like nothing else. And
yes.
that's exactly how you were describing it. But the way you said it, it really gave me goosebumps. That it hit home for me. No matter how much it, but people have to experience it to be just open open to receiving, and then the miracles start happening, right? So, and
Absolutely.
like you said, in other system, it will take you, who knows, 20 years and maybe a lifetime, and you
Yeah.
still may not get to that deep layer in the subconscious, unconscious, where the stories are buried so deep that
Yes.
we are scared to even talk about those, or we don't we have totally started saying they don't exist, you know
That's right.
and in
That's
the
right.
session, when a story comes up, you say, oh my god, how does she know about this story that I even told myself, right?
That's right. Well, I
uh,
often go back to the thought, and I've heard it many times in body talk classes, and it's just become something that people hear from me now a lot. We know about 3% of what's going on a good day. We're only conscious of at most about 3% of our story and what drives our emotional reactivity and our sensitivity. And that 97%, that unconscious, that subconscious world that it's just not available to us. Body Talk has been such an incredible tool for excavating and softening the stories, um, that soften the symptoms and the reactivity too. Making life certainly far more peaceful.
Very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, people have to experience it, but you have said it very well in words. So I'm happy to hear it that way from you. So now you became a practitioner, and
Mm-hmm.
some people say that when they become a practitioner, there's a certain direction or a niche that shows up, right? Uh, we're all a body talk practitioner, but again, we all have our own little comfort zones, or we take the body talk, or the body talk takes us, I don't know,
Yes.
in a certain direction, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you became a practitioner, were you thinking of, doing something in particular about that in this sphere of Indigenous people, or it just showed up one day?
Well, there's a few responses to that story. Um, One of the, when you talk about those crumbs along the way, in one of the sort of significant movements in my life, I found myself in Indigenous community, in ceremonial community, local to me where I am. And, that was another place and a most affirming place where really upon meeting people, they went, oh, you're one of the healers. Oh, okay. um, Often, even in the body talk world, people often steer away from that word healer, as though it's an ego thing, that people are more important than how we're all equal. But in the Indigenous world, it's really understood as there's there's a whole variety of gifts, and one of our most important um, processes in our lives is to come to know who we are and what our gifts are, to grow them, and then to offer them to for everyone, in whatever our sphere is. You might have a business gift, or you might have a listening gift, or you might have a growing food gift. Um, when I stepped into that world, I was just really quickly told, oh, you get to stand over there with those people. And in my journey up to that point, I didn't know there were people that I could stand with. So in that world, I very much have found, um, I guess, validation of the things that I saw. So doing that work, I came to work with, do healing work with a lot of Indigenous people over the years. And in my teaching life, so that's one piece of the story. In my teaching life, very early when I was in student services, there were students coming from war affected countries at that time. And there was a lot of, we support these kids, and you would see behaviors where they would, up and leave the room. They wouldn't feel comfortable in a space. They'd be, you know, leaving all the time, and showing other kinds of behaviors. And I noticed that many of those same behaviors were happening with Indigenous students, but there wasn't the same viewing of them as the students coming from war affected areas were being seen. And it made me really curious, and but also concerned. And I looked and I went, these two populations are behaving like, there's been a war going on. Where is the war for the Indigenous students? And that really began a journey of learning about the experience of Indigenous people over generations through colonization, and the impacts of trauma that at that time, now, keep in mind, this is 20 or so years ago, that there wasn't a consciousness about colonization the same way there is now. Mm-hmm. So I became very curious and wanted to be helpful to these students and their families. And I had just a fabulous administrator at that time, whose perspective was that we do whatever we can. Whatever is needed is how we help people. And I was just beginning to learn. I'd just taken my first couple of BodyTalk courses. And I said, would you let me sit with some of these mums, sometimes even like on my own time? And I, was told, yeah, okay, like we'll do a little experiment and see how these people feel. And the feedback that I had from these moms was that they were like, I don't know what you're doing, but whenever we do this work, I'm just absolutely fine for like a week. And there's nothing, I just never had this experience before of being so fine. So it really taught me the potential of BodyTalk in being a helpful healing modality in working with trauma without having to talk about trauma, without having to relive experiences. And there was, just a funny story of this one mom who, as I worked on her, it was really clear that she wasn't able to process any of her experience. And I asked her, like, does your digestion move at all? like, do you have bowel movements?
Oh, wow.
And she said, no. Like, she couldn't remember the last time she'd had a bowel movement. And I worked on her on a Friday, and she came back on a Monday, and she said, I've lost 8 pounds.
Wow. Wow.
When people have experienced a whole lot, as is the case with populations that have been impacted by colonization, it can be that there's just too much to process. And BodyTalk is such a kind and gentle tool for helping us to process our experience, helping us to digest it, and lighten the load.
Wow. Very, very well said. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions because you
Sure.
are answering some of my doubts. So the first one was when you said that you by saying that you are a healer. Okay, so I understand that in the Indigenous community. How about outside? Because that's what I always heard, that, just like you said, that it almost sounds like an ego trip when you say,
yeah,
I'm a healer and I have, kind of quotes, powers that I can heal your body. So we should not be making those claims. How about making that claim outside of indigenous population? Do you feel comfortable doing saying that?
Well, I soften it a little and I say I'm a healer type.
Ah, okay.
That's the type that I
That's a
am.
play with words.
Yeah,
I like
but
that.
I often will do a little bit of unpacking of what does healing mean, right?
Ah.
To me, that we receive healing when um, we interact with something, and it can be anything. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I was T-boned in a car accident and actually had a huge healing experience from it,
Yeah.
right?
So,
So
well, the
and anything
pain
can do
can
it.
be a healing experience. People just don't believe that, right?
Right, right. So anything can be an agent of healing. And to me, healing is when either we are supported in being able to process the experience that's happening to us now so that we don't hold it in ourselves, in our bodies, in our minds, in our subconscious emotions that drive our reactivity. So either we're helped in processing the now, or we're helped in softening and releasing what has been held from the past. So to me, that's what healing is. And that as things are softened and released, there's more and more space and opportunity for who we are to be experienced by ourselves and to be expressed. So I don't think of healing as, oh, I touched you and now it's all changed. Healing is a process of
Mm-hmm.
reconciliation with our experience and ability to take the good, learn from what's challenging, but to not carry the charge of the things that have been hard on us from the past. So,
Yeah. Sorry, maybe
no,
finish your thought.
sure,
I wanted to just add some color to what you're saying.
sure,
So, you know, sometimes, you can offer so much, right?
yeah,
And the other side is not at the point that they want to receive, right?
sure,
They are
yeah,
not ready. They don't have the courage to face their story. And, you can get a little upset, uptight, and this may be your family, right?
sure,
Because, they are at a totally different place in their journey. And you are at a different floor of the building, as Caroline May says it, right?
yeah,
And you can have a very different view of what their experience could teach them, but they don't want to learn, right?
right, sure,
So for whatever reason, I'm not even judging them. I'm just making an observation that people tell me stories, but they clearly do not want to progress through those stories,
yeah,
whether that is a pain, whether that is a trauma, whatever that is.
yeah,
So in that case, I sometimes just say, okay, I show them compassion, I
mm,
listen to their story, and I take a step back because they are not ready.
yeah,
So what do you do? I want to know your reaction, or, well, reaction is, just like we said, is the wrong word. What
yeah,
is the response when you clearly know that you can help? You can be a source of inspiration. You can, bring a lot of relief, but they want to stick to their story.
yeah. And I think you're right to step back and give people room, because healing work, those journeys have to be something that people choose. And if I have a reaction to someone staying in their story,
Mm-hmm.
then that actually is a sign to me that I have work to do.
Mm.
If I'm not truly peaceful with wherever someone else is, that's a sign. My reactivity is a sign for my healing, that I need to attend to things. But I will highlight to my clients, when they're reactive, whether it's to a person or an event, that is an invitation for them to step into their own work. And I see reactivity as a gift. Sometimes we might need to be reactive for a long time before we're ready to unpack what it's about. And that's a sacred thing too.
Yeah,
So,
because we
yep,
have to go through so much suffering before,
yeah,
you know, like
sometimes, yeah.
Eckhart Tolle says, you have not suffered enough, so you are gonna go through that pain, because that's also a choice, right?
Yep,
Not doing anything is a choice, and you're gonna keep on talking about your problem, and in some ways you're gonna get into that pain body, and
yep,
you are not seeking a solution,
yep,
right? So, yes, we do the work of healing, but it's good to also remind people that there's a possibility for anybody
yep,
to do, once you decide that I want to break free and I want to stand in my power, right?
yep,
So that's where the whole thing starts, where you say, show me the way. Okay.
yep,
And that is a point in life, which, some of us get to, and others may have another lifetime to go before they get there, right?
right. And no judgment either way, right?
Yeah, no judgment. That's why I said,
Yeah,
I leave it with compassion, that
yep,
I am here to hear your story, and just leave the breadcrumb there.
yep,
If you choose to walk this way, I'll be here. If you
yep,
don't, it's up to you. That's
yep,
it. There is no grudge. There is no judgment. There
yep,
is a simple, this is how things are.
yep. And I often, you know, often when people are sitting or they're there on your table, it's because they're in distress in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll often let people know, we can heal from anything. We can have softening, we can have movement with anything, with enough time, attention, energy, and quite possibly support. And this work helps people to set aside some time and direct where their attention can go. And that helps build that energy for healing. So it's a very supportive practice.
Yeah, and the best thing is it's complementary.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what else you're trying, you may be, doing your treatments with Western medicine, homeopathy, or Ayurvedic
Mm-hmm.
things, it can be anything. This is
Yep.
in addition to, it is not in conflict with anything else. And
Yep.
actually, that reminds me the question that you said you have also learned homeopathy. So, are there other things that you use in your body talk sessions?
Well, I'll draw on anything that I am aware of that comes up. I
Mm-hmm.
I primarily work with BodyTalk. Um, I also work with a practice that helps with uh, using that reactivity as a mirror and helping
Mm.
people to soften and understand how someone that they're affected by is a mirror for them, and how to really kindly and safely unwind that story. So that's another way of working that I actually received in a dream not long after I entered that Indigenous world. So that's my main other part of my practice.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was wondering, is it okay if I speak just a little about the way that I'm doing this work in community?
Oh,
Is that
absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely.
Well, a good friend of mine who was Indigenous and lived in a northern community But, brilliant woman, strong, did lots and lots of healing work. But she passed away quite young at 58 from a stroke. And I always felt that her life would have been so much easier if healing support were more available to the people around her. She was kind of someone doing that work on her own in a space where there were a lot of people struggling in various ways. So when she passed, a seed just got planted in me of how do you make healing supports available for maybe people who don't usually have that accessible for them, or maybe it's not available financially, or it's difficult for time. So I started working with online healing groups. So I have one that we actually started off as two groups, an Indigenous focused group and a non-Indigenous focused group. And I ran the two groups back to back. And the day we actually launched these groups, even though the date of launch had been chosen months earlier, there was a huge discovery in Canada of children's graves located at one of the residential school sites, which has prompted a search throughout residential school sites throughout Canada, and I believe it's been happening in the US as well. The day of that announcement was the day that we had our these first sessions. And part of the intention was that over time, maybe the Indigenous group would come to feel comfortable as part of the other group as well. And maybe those in the non-Indigenous group would learn a little bit about how to be a good relative and how to be a good listener, and might be comfortable sitting as an ally at times to support the Indigenous group. These two groups ran back to back, and after a year, the women called to sit together. So we became one circle of Indigenous and non-Indigenous women healing together, being meaningfully helpful to each other. And the way that we do this work is through BodyTalk, and we'll choose 3 people randomly each time, but everyone who views the session, either live or recorded later, gets the benefit of the work that we do. And it's just become this really lovely and kind, reconciliation focused space, even though we hardly ever say that word. But when we come to get to know each other and care for each other, just getting to know each other, a natural outcome is that what I want for me is what I want for you. And what I want for my children is what I want for your children. So it's just become this beautiful little circle. So that's one of the ways that I bring that intention of giving back to Indigenous community the things that I've received. It's kind of like living my life as a thank you in action. And the second way is we're just now launching a pilot in a First Nations school. We're starting off doing online video healing work for staff with the intention of hopefully in the fall launching that school wide, so that as a school that they integrate a little activity every day that supports that lightening of the load for everyone, and helps teachers and families and students, recover from the stresses of COVID, but also just lightening those stories that we all carry.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm really, actually, I would congratulate you on finding your tribe, right? And the line of work that is very satisfying for you. Just a little clarification. You said we. So is there a group of body talkers that are working with these Indigenous people when they are holding this healing circle?
In the groups, we're called the Blue Dragonfly Healing Community,
Okay.
the circle of women. I'm the one that does that circle, but there are a couple of body talk practitioners in it as well.
Okay.
And part of the intention, some of the Indigenous women of that circle have moved into doing one-on-one work with that other practitioner, who's
Okay.
ready for it. So the big picture idea is to kind of grow that network,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not there at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
And
right. So they get to
yeah,
experience it as a group, and it's a healing circle for everybody. And then whosoever and whenever they are ready, then they go for further work and taking one-on-one sessions, right?
yeah, if
Okay.
they want to, but
Okay.
many of my regulars from my own practice are part of this group, and people who I used to need to see, every 4 to 6 weeks, they're really doing very fine with the work that we do each week. And they can watch the recordings again if they want to go back, or they can see old ones, and they find that the help that they're getting there is really taking care of them well. So
Very nice.
my one-on-one practice is quieter, but my the way that I'm working is expanding into other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also have a similar circle that I
Mm-hmm.
started with women, and we discuss healing modalities, and we use meditation and body talk, whatever comes up,
Yeah,
as a
beautiful.
group, right? As a
Yeah,
group. And but what you were saying is that you are choosing, or you're picking one or two people, and you are actually doing a session for them, which is a little
yeah,
bit different, right?
yeah,
Because I've seen people do a group session. There are other body talk practitioners who just do a general group session, right?
yeah,
So this healing circle is a bit different. All
yeah.
right, that's great. I'm glad things are working well with Indigenous people. Are there stories, other stories that you want to share um, that speak of, what is the difference you are making in this community?
Hmm.
Some personal story, or something else that stands out?
Well, there's just been so many.
Mm-hmm.
There's just been so many. One woman who's been particularly exciting to see her growing into herself. When we first began working together, it started with my one-on-one practice. She had extreme arthritic pain all the time, and extreme
Mm-hmm.
emotional reactivity. Angry, affected all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in her case, I was hired as they called it aftercare support. She made a statement. There was a national inquiry that happened in Canada for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and that was part of the story in her family, and she made a statement to them. And in the time since she had lost her loved one, she had not been able to speak of that person without being completely affected all over again. And in just one session, that charge completely went away. And she's been able to speak of her loved one with, love and good memory and compassion, but also with passion for the importance of there being changes that help protect vulnerable Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit people. So that one woman, like, that was a dramatic shift that happened right in that moment. But over the few years of knowing her, there's been such a resolution in her physical symptoms, where she always was an 8 or 10 out of 10 in pain. If
Mm-hmm.
pain comes up, most of the time it's a 2 or a 3. And she's also really stepped into her own as far as someone who's knowing what her gifts are, growing them and sharing them. So she's become quite a positive force in her community, and a welcome voice in our circle whenever she shares.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing that story, Jennifer. That's awesome. Um, how should people contact you? That will be one thing, and
Sure.
the other is there a big overall message that you want listeners to remember you by?
Okay. Well, as far as the message, I would the message that I'd like people to hear is that healing is far easier than you think and far more gentle than you might expect. Working with Indigenous community, there's often been that concern when you use the word healing. Oh, does that mean it's going to be hard? It's going to be emotional. I've got to do so much work for a little bit of gain, or it's going to be worse before it's better. And that's not been my experience in the work with BodyTalk. I found it to be kind and gentle and effective. And people have often told me that they've come further in 3 or 6 months of work with BodyTalk than they have in 2 to 5 to 15 years of therapy. So healing is easier than you think, and maybe even gentler than you would expect. And people can get hold of me. I've got a website, energeticexplorations.com, and an email is info@energeticexplorations.com, I guess. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Mhm. Wow, Jennifer, I know I want to continue for another hour and want to keep hearing these wonderful stories, and the way you explain them. It has really, touched my heart. And I wish you a lot of luck in pursuing your dream and doing that wonderful work. And yes, we are all grateful that we stepped into BodyTalk,
Mm-hmm.
and we have come to realize those dreams. And you said it well, that healing is so gentle and so kind as
Mm-hmm.
compared to living with your pain and trauma for the
Yes.
rest of your life. So,
Yes.
message is, go get a session if you have not tried it, right? Do a favor to yourself, just like we did once upon a time.
That's right.
So I think
And
we will conclude with that, unless you have any other thing to add, Jennifer.
well, I want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Indu, to spread awareness and have these conversations so that people can hear all kinds of voices of possibility. And slipping back to that healer word, it's the people that we work with that give meaning and purpose, that allow people that do this kind of work to have meaning and purpose. Because without the people to work on, we're just sitting around going, I'd sure love to be doing something. So we need those people and their journeys as much as they may need that support, and it's very reciprocal that way. So thank you for what you're doing, and I hope people take you up on your words.
Ah, appreciate that, Jennifer. You know, I, I'm I I started thinking that I was doing the world a favor, but
Mm-hmm.
now I realize I'm doing myself a favor. Because I get to learn through other people's journey, through their experience, as much
Yeah,
as they get to learn from their own story. And
yeah,
let's hope the world learns from all of our stories, right? So
absolutely.
with that, we will conclude it. And the last thing is, if you have questions about this episode or any others, my email is indu@bodytalksmindlessons.com. And we will meet again with another story. Stay tuned. Bye bye, Jennifer.
Bye bye, and do. Thank you.